Hi folks, my perspective here. In this video clip I'll be looking at lighting and shadows and the combination of lighting and shadows with perspective and how these elements together help us understand that the earth is flat. We'll be looking at the art of William Turner, some of his paintings, and see how his understanding of light and shadow, how it can benefit us and help us in our understanding of how light works. So William Turner was an impressionist. He's often called the painter of light, and he was fascinated with light and perspective. So he was influenced by the Dutch artist and painter Willem van der Velde. Look at this painting, Dutch boats in a gale, painted in 1801. Look at the ships on the right. You see they're always in perspective. They don't sink below the horizon. That's what we're going to be looking at. So the ships are always above the horizon. They just simply get smaller as they move away from you. And look at the light. Now these ships are all leaning in different directions because the waves of the sea is tossing them about. But look at the light in the sky. Look at the clouds, the shadows in the clouds, and look at the earth. Now we're going to discuss these, and what we're going to discuss goes against the grain of what we've been taught. But nevertheless, from your own visual observations, you will see that this is true. So this is William Turner, and we see his understanding of perspective, how he used it in art. We look at the sun, we see the sun and the reflection of the sun in the water. Look at the boats, the reflection of the boats is always underneath the boat. But also, we see the moon and its reflection in the same water, on the same surface. You see, this is the sun and the moon and the reflection in the same visual frame of reference. Look at the reflections. You see, this tells us William Turner understood the earth to be flat, because this is only possible on a flat plane. So, let's analyze this. You see, from William Turner's perspective, if the sun is 150 million kilometers back, and the moon is 400,000 kilometers back, you have two objects. How can two objects at those distances reflect on the surface you are standing on, if that surface is a ball? And yet, like the ship, its reflection is directly below the ship. How can the same apply to the sun and the moon if they are those far distances away from you and William Turner standing on a ball? You see, the reflections are always underneath the object, no matter how high they are from the surface or how far away they are from the surface. This is a simple 3D perspective thing. Reflections and objects on the horizon, no matter how far they are away, always reflect directly what is above it. If the earth was a ball, this cannot apply. It doesn't matter what your angle is to that surface. Reflection stays the same. That's because that surface is flat. It has to be. That's how the human eye works. You see, the sunlight reflects in straight lines, and we're going to prove this just now. So what happens is the sunlight reflects into your eye. Right? We know that in this process that the image is upside down, and that your brain flips the image the right way around. And the light is traveling in a straight line. Because if the light was bent, these objects will be in different positions on the horizon and all around you. The light has to travel in a straight line. And if the earth is flat, it all makes sense. This cannot happen on a ball. So as you raise your eye level and you raise your position up and you're looking down now on that same scene, objects don't change their position remains in the same relative position from your perspective. You see, that was a ball. If the earth was a ball, these things and objects in the distance would continue to change. It would be a total disaster. You wouldn't see things in their right position. Light has to travel in a straight line. So if the sun is 150 million kilometers away and the moon is at a different angle at 400,000 kilometers, how can William Turner see the reflection of the sun and the moon and the ship all in the same image, and the reflection is underneath the sun and moon, and the reflections are all in perspective? Cannot happen on a ball. This ocean has to be flat. for this to happen. Now, if both your light sources are behind the horizon, how can the light from those objects reflect on the earth? On this side, the light cannot bend around the ball. So William Turner, in his own way, he understood the earth was flat and he showed it in his paintings. Today people will say, well, you're an idiot if you believe the earth is flat. Well, there are many talented, intelligent people who knew and who know today that the earth is flat. We are living in a lie, an illusion. So this is one of William Turner's paintings. It's the moon and it's the moonlight. Now look at the silhouette that the ships are casting. The light is behind the ships and in front. How's that if the ocean's a ball? But now, something far more important, the light itself. In your mind, change the moon to a sun. What will happen? Well, it'll just get more contrasty. The sun cannot illuminate the sky. The sun cannot just now make the sky turn blue. The light will just get brighter. You see, in the day, this is Dutch Boats in a Gale by Van der Velde. Look at the light in the sky. Look at the ships. Do you understand? Our light and shadow is working in this image. How can the sunlight, one light source, create light like this? It simply cannot. Go back to the moon image now. If you're in a dark room and you bring in a spotlight, that spotlight cannot illuminate the whole room. It's impossible. So something else is going on. Now, when the sun rises in the east early in the morning, and if you're in a tall building, you go to the west side of the building, you open a window in the west, and what happens? The sunlight floods into the room and illuminates the whole room, even though the sun is on the horizon in the east. How can the light from the sun reverse back and penetrate the room and illuminate the whole room? That's because the light that's coming into that window is not from the sun. It's as simple as that. So now what I'm telling you and what we're discussing goes against the grain. I know it does, but we're going to prove it. So before you have a knee-jerk reaction and start throwing things around, chill out, be calm, and pay attention. So look at the silver ball. You see the surface of the ball is round. That means the light is coming to the ball and coming straight back into your eye. The surface of the ball is round, but the light is straight. How do we know? Well, look at the shadows of the people. Remember, it's a mirror image, so the light is behind the photographer. How can the shadows on the left point towards the sun? It's impossible. So from this mirror ball image, we understand that light travels in a straight line. It hits the surface of this ball and comes straight into your eye. The ball is curved, the light is reflecting straight. And the horizon on this ball, flat and straight. You see, if light bends, everything will be distorted, as you see in this ball image. The same would apply to the flat earth that we live on. Light travels in straight lines. That's why the reflection on this ball is the way it is. Things are in their relative position, their correct position where they are in 3D space around you, but it's been reflected back into your eye. So here's a ball. In other words, if light was bending, objects would be in different positions. You see, the objects wouldn't be in the right position. The light has to travel in a straight line, and that's why objects on the horizon and everything you see around you is in its correct position, because light travels in a straight line. The other issue is, look at the light. When the light is in front of you, how can the back end of the ball be lit? It's impossible. How can that one light source light up the sky and reflect back into this ball with one light source? It's impossible. So, if the earth was a ball, as you move around, the light will be reflecting off that ball in different angles. So at midday, the sun's above, things on the horizon, the light will be reflecting away from you. And we don't see this. The light is constant. That means we're living on a flat plane. The light and the shadows don't change. They don't change angles during the course of the day. They stay constant. So as the sun turns and it's moving, the angle of the shadow changes with regard to where the sun is. So let's go back to that moon shot, this painting of the moonlight. You see, in the day, another light source must be lighting the sky. Because if they only had one light source, night and day would look the same. Just you'd have a harsher light in the day and a lesser light at night time. And this is undeniable. You can't escape this fact. So to help us understand this, we're gonna look at buildings on the horizon. So you'll see, for example, if the sun's in front of you. Now the sun travels across. If there's only one light source, the back end of the building cannot be illuminated because the light can't bend around those buildings and illuminate the back of those buildings. It's simply impossible. So something else is happening. You see, this happens at night time because you have one light source at night. It's the moon. The same would happen during the day, just that the light would be stronger in the day. This light that's supposed to be in outer space cannot turn the sky blue. It's physically impossible. So this is not what we see. Your life on earth, if the sun was giving us, it was the only light source in the day, our lives would be miserable. In fact, we wouldn't survive. This is not what we see. Yet in the day, the light's in front of you, the back end of the building is illuminated. Tells you that there must be two light sources in the day. You're going to say, well, that's insane. Well, go outside, use your eyes and look. What we've been taught about the world we live in is an illusion. It's fantasy. So, as the Bible says, in the beginning, God created light. Let there be light. That was in day one. This is the light of day. It's not the same as the sunlight. He divided the light into dark and light. How Jehovah did this, I don't know. Then on day 2, he created a dome. And as Job said, he beat out the skies like a molten mirror. 2 Peter says that the heavens stand firm. Daniel tells us that those in the last days, there will be some that will shine brightly like the heavens, like the firmament. So a photographer would do the same. You see, a photographer has a person standing there. He cannot use one light source. He would use a soft light, he would use a reflector, and then he would use a hard light. And it's these aspects of these lights together he can illuminate the person or the object properly. So there's a lion, right? He would take a softbox. This would create the light of day, the ambient light. He would use a reflector on the opposite side. And then he would take a hard light, which is like the sun, and he would move that hard light around until he's happy with the lighting. And it's only in this way that he can illuminate a 3D object in 3D space. And this is the way the world works. A photographer cannot illuminate a 3D object with one light. It's physically impossible. Now, if there was only the sunlight, your world would be a nightmare. It would be ugly. So we have the light of day, a reflector, a dome, like a molten mirror covering the earth, and we have the sun. And it's the sun that gives us the hard shadows and the hard light. And it's the combination of these three things, the two lights and the reflector, that we see the way we do. If there was no reflector, right, and there was no dome, right, so the light's not working from them, and we only have the sun, well, this is what the whole day would look like. The only time you'd see objects lit is when the sun was behind you. Your world would be like a horror movie. And that's a fact. You go try it out. We know this. The crazy thing is that we know this and we understand this, but when we go outside in the real world, we've been so brainwashed that we don't think. We don't appreciate or respect the creation. So here's the moon. The moon cannot illuminate the sky. It just simply cannot. It can't give light into the sky. So some people have taken images like this and have said, well, what is that second sun doing there? This is not a lens reflection because it's behind the clouds. People look at this and say, what's going on here? What on earth am I seeing? Well, you're seeing the sun reflect off the dome. And as Job said, that dome is like a molten mirror, beat out. And we're going to look at this in detail, some more detail. You see, here's another image. People look at this and say, well, what's going on? What am I seeing? And people talk about another planet, Nibiru. You're just seeing the reflection of the sun on the dome. And this is not a lens flare because you see the reflection in the reflection of the water. And people take video footage of things like this and they're astounded. Now, especially in colder areas when there's no moisture in the air, we see this all the time. Now, I've worked in the Mascarene Islands, and during the cyclones, the moisture in the air evaporates. And you see images like this during those periods of the year. And most people look at it and ponder it, but the reality of what it actually is and what they are seeing escapes them. Like the people taking this video, no idea. They just say, wow, it's amazing. Here's people in the Amazon. So obviously after it rained or it's extremely dry in the heat of the day, and they see this and wonder, look at this. While you're seeing the sun reflect off the dome. It's as simple as that. If the earth was a ball spinning around in space, well, explain how that's happening. If we just spend some time pondering on the creation, you'll see a different world to the one you were taught to believe in. It's as simple as that. This is the real world. This is reality. And these things give evidence that there is a creator, a powerful creator, who has all these things under his power and control. So as the sun sets, watch the light reflect off the dome and it moves with the sun. And there are two of those lights. So if I tell you, well, the earth has a dome and it has two light sources, and these sources are orbiting around the earth, you'd say I'm crazy. But the evidence is there. Perspective. And many artists and painters and photographers and cinematographers who work with light, they know this, and they give you clues in their movies and they give you clues in their paintings. Because if they come and tell you outright, we're living on a flat plane under a dome, people will start having convulsions. So here's an image, and we see these images in the day of a city scene and of night. Two different light. A light source of the moon cannot illuminate the back end of the building. The same with the sunlight. You need another light source, and you need a reflector. That's how we see 3D objects in 3D space illuminated. So back onto the flat earth. You see, people take images like this all the time. The boats and the buildings aren't sinking below the horizon. Yet there are unscrupulous people, and they know who they are, who will go and cut up images and paste images together and say, well, there you go. You know, there are buildings sinking below the horizon, and yet another man will go with this and take a photograph like this, where it's not happening. Buildings just simply get smaller in the distance. None of them, and the bridges and the buildings aren't falling over the horizon. No, they just get smaller and smaller in the distance. It's perspective. Bridges don't fall over, buildings don't fall over. So you must understand that there is being an all-out effort to convince you the earth's a ball, and it's simply not. So at reflections, no matter how high an object is from you, its reflection is always underneath it. And the light source, look at the light. One light source like this cannot illuminate the blue sky because the light's coming straight in your face. And we see, as you move your position, we see the images and the reflections always above, below. No matter how you move your position, tells you that the ocean is flat. It's the only way that this is possible. You see, if the earth was a ball, these things would all be deformed and would be in different positions. A bird flying in the sky or a cloud far away, or that light streak in the sky. Its position cannot be underneath it in proportion. So, no artist or master painted things falling over and things sinking below the horizon. They understood light, they understood perspective, they understood reflections. These three things together tell us that the earth is flat. We've just been lied to. The reality is, this is what you see with your eyes, and then NASA comes with a silly ball cartoon. And this is the reality. You see, the real influence for these artists was the Creator. Because the greatest artist and painter of light is the Creator. The Bible says his name is Jehovah. And he's the greatest artist. He paints in real light, the real thing. We can only imitate what the Creator does. The Creator is a wonderful, marvelous artist. And his creation sings, not just in light, but in sound. It's astounding. It's been an absolute privilege to live and see the work of this Creator. I was born, I didn't deserve to see this and understand it. What an absolute privilege. And so, the common sense tells you, if I see this painting, who painted that? You want to learn about this because you're astounded and that's beautiful. When I see this, I ask myself, well, who's painted this? How is it that I can see this and is painting this in my mind with light? And it moves, and it's awesome to look at. We see a gentleness, a loving kindness that is astounding. But unfortunately, we live in a wicked system ruled by despots, psychopaths, who don't want you to see and listen and think. They don't want you to be free. They want you to believe that this stuff just evolved. I mean, look at this. Come on. This evolved? Really? It's flat. Say what you want to. Your eyes and your mind tells you it's flat. So we need to take time to look and appreciate and meditate and think on these things. And we'll see. No doubt about it. There's a Creator. And the quality of this Creator possesses is truly astounding. Hi folks, my perspective here. In this video clip, I want to talk about light and how an artist and a photographer will work with light and what we learn from this. Now, if you go outside and it's an overcast day, what do you notice? The sun is blocked out by the clouds, but yet you can see clearly. How come? Now, if you're in a lounge setting, right, and you have a lamp, if you put the lamp on, that lamp cannot illuminate everything in that room. And it's not because of the lampshade. And if you move that lamp around, right, if you're on this side, say of this Vespa, if you're on this side, it'll still be dark. So what you need to do is you need to bring in a ceiling. You need to put lights in that ceiling. Now those ceiling lights will create an ambient light, will light up that room properly. Now you can move your lamp around and put it in a position where you need the light, where you need supported light. Now, in the world, if we just had the sunlight, it would be the same as the moon. The sunlight cannot illuminate the sky. The sun is supposed to be 150 million kilometers away. This is what you would see. Everything this side would be black, darkness. The same as that lounge setting. The same principle applies. In this lounge, if you only had one light source, and it was the lamp, and if the lamp is the sun, and if the sun moves, you still need another light source. You need another source of light. This is how we see. The use of light in this room tells us that the setup in the world, the real world, is the same. The principles apply to both. If you're outside and the sun's in front of you, you're surrounded by light. So the light of day is you living in light. You see, one light source, if the sun was our only light source, it cannot illuminate everything equally. This side of the Vespa would be in total darkness. So something's wrong. If you look at an image, you can see, well, this doesn't add up to reality. Let's use a photographer, for example. If he just brings in a spotlight to light this Vespa, on this side, the Vespa will be in total darkness. You make the light brighter, it just becomes more intense. Harder shadows, more contrasty, that's all. So you need to bring in a soft light. This soft light will add ambient light, right? And then you need to bring in a reflector. That reflector now, you have 3D lighting. You have lighting that can illuminate a 3D object in 3D space. Now you can move your lamp to where you want it to be, your hard light. The principles that are applied in this, the sun would be the spotlight. Creates a hot spot, creates the shadows. The softbox, that would be the light of day. It's a different kind of light. And the reflector, there must be some sort of dome covering over the earth for you to see this. If you're riding in a forest, for example, right, and it's overcast, you can still see clearly. You can walk through those trees because you are surrounded by light. One light source cannot do this. These people are surrounded by light, and there's a hard light that causes the shadows. For example, where's the light? Where's the sun in this image? It's on the opposite side, right? Yet the opposite side of the Vespas are not in total darkness. It means they're getting illuminated from a light source on the other side. Look, one light source. If we are spinning, right, on this ball Earth, one side would always be totally dark. You cannot avoid this. You cannot escape this. first the one side of the bike would be illuminated, the right hand side. Then only the top would be illuminated, and then the side. Also your shadows. If you were in the northern hemisphere or in the southern hemisphere, your shadows can only ever face north. If you're in the north, and if you're in the south, your shadows can only ever face south. The angle of your shadows would never change, because the light source is fixed and you're spinning on a ball. And this is not what we experience. Our experience in the world is not this. Now, if you were at the equator or even near the equator, right, your shadow now, remember the Earth is supposed to be orbiting around the Sun. Since the Earth is fixed at the same angle, your shadows will swap sides. Every 6 months, your shadow will be on the one side. 6 months later, your shadow will be on the other side. This is unavoidable. You cannot escape this. So the ball Earth with the Sun illuminating the Earth as the only light source, this is a fabrication. It's not real. This is impossible. Light does not work like this. The principles that how we use light on Earth, they don't change. Our understanding of light and how we use light. One light source cannot light a 3D object. One light source cannot do this. As we see in this image, you walk in this forest. In a day you are surrounded by light. I find it interesting in the Bible that it says on day one, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And He separated the light and the darkness. In other words, He created light and darkness. And that's the ambient light. In other words, that ambient light fills everything. So we are told, though, that the light and the darkness is caused by the rotation of the Earth. Then, on day 2, the Creator separated the waters above and the waters below. In the book of Job, it says that He caused the heavens. He beat out the heavens like a molten mirror. The same mirror that we use as a reflector in photography and in filming. So we have the ambient light of day. This is light. You are living in the light. And then the reflector. And then He created the vegetation and the land appeared. So it's interesting to notice that the vegetation would have survived in this ambient light. And then it says the third day. So obviously this light source must have been rotating, must be turning, because it says a day, a second day, a third day. And then on the fourth day He creates the sun. And it's the sun that gives us the hard light and gives us the heat. And then on the fifth day He created the birds and the fishes. Now if we look in this video footage, we often see images like this, and this is because the sun is reflecting off the dome. There is a dome like a molten mirror that covers the Earth, and this keeps our atmosphere in, keeps the heat in, and here's visible proof of it. The world that we are taught and the world that we see with our eyes do not match up. Our eyes show us one thing and we are taught something totally different.